Hey guys, so if you're like me, you probably woke up to some amazing news today. Artifact Fast Equip now supports save and switch custom loadouts. And this is something that we'll be getting next patch. So obviously players have been screaming for some sort of artifact loadouts, artifact presets thing in Genshin for ages. And for a while now, we've actually had this thing, Fast Equip artifacts. There's quick configuration, which kind of like AI generates usable build, but a lot of the time it's pretty scuffed. And there was this thing called custom configuration where you can do that and the game kind of populates what you'd want. But if you know what you're doing, you might want to fine tune it a bit. Say for example, my Ayaka here, you can use Blizzard Strayer, but sometimes I might also want to use Marashase Hunter. But what this doesn't have is a save feature. So every time you're swapping your character's artifacts around, maybe sometimes you want Blizzard Strayer on Ayaka for like AoE content, sometimes you want Marashase Hunter. Every time you want to do that with this sort of feature, you'd have to custom configuration it all over again, generate, and yeah, it's not really artifact loadouts. But now it seems they actually are bringing that. Say goodbye to tedious gear swaps, and you can see the GIF here. You can make these custom configuration plans and it will be remembered next time you open the page. Anyway, if you haven't read this blog post, I do recommend reading it, but I do want to focus on the pros and cons that I have noticed myself rather than just read this out for you. So the first thing, and something that's been quite a big topic of discussion at the moment, is because this is not perfect, you never really generate ideal builds, which means if you know what you're doing, you always kind of have to fine tune everything, especially once you account for different team buffs and stuff like that. The game won't know you're overcapping on crit rate or stuff like that. But I do want to start off with a negative, because I think this is the most important thing, which is, does these plans actually save the alternative artifacts, the artifacts that you swapped in and out to fine tune your build? Now immediately the way you read this is you think it does, because it saves your custom loadouts, and it talks about remembering your loadout, and it talks about the alternatives. But as a Reddit user points out, we need to be careful with the wording, because this whole article here, whilst you think it saves your exact loadout, it's not actually guaranteed. It doesn't explicitly say it will save your alternative selections. The comment says the save configuration button is on the stat heuristics page, and you really shouldn't overlook this. But yeah, as the guy points out, the save configuration button is on the stat heuristics page, basically like the AI generated filtered build. And as we can see here, the check alternatives button, which is where you actually fine tune and pick your exact pieces, this is on the page after, like after you've already saved the plan. Then if you look carefully at this check alternatives screen, I don't know if it's slightly below, if it's slightly off the screen, but there is actually no save alternative button here. So it's basically worded as an additionally. It doesn't actually explicitly say you'll be able to save these alternatives. So again, let me go to my Navi here, let me go custom configuration, let me just populate this. All this looks pretty decent, although unfortunately you can't select both crit rate and crit damage, which kind of sucks. But yeah, if I generate a build here, look at this, it's not ideal. I've got too much crit rate, so let me swap that out for crit damage, generate again. So what does that all mean? It means if we can't precisely choose our exact builds and save it, if this only really saves the AI generated ones, even if you can fine tune it a bit, if that is true, it's still not really exactly what we want. Because at the end of the day, if I've got this build here and it's not the exact same that I've got here, even if I switch to this, even if I switch to maybe this, there is no guarantee I'll be able to save this exact build and be able to just instantly go to artifacts and just equip it. There is no guarantee. Now the point is, it is possible we'll be able to save the exact build, but it's not guaranteed. We don't actually know for certain, which would be unfortunate, but we have to wait and see. Anyway, I would like to focus the rest of this video on the idea that it does save your exact build, because I want to focus on the positives if that is true. So the blog post does say you can make up to 2 custom loadouts per character, which, let's be honest, is probably one of the main reasons why you'd even want artifact loadouts, which is constantly switching between builds. Like for example, you got your DPS Moika build with Obsidian Codex. You play this when you're playing her as a damage dealer, but you know, sometimes you want to play her as like a support buffer with the scroll set, because none of the characters with the scroll set is so broken. So sometimes you want to switch to this. So I can have my DPS Moika build, I can have my support Moika build. Other examples, like I said, if you're a big Ayaka main, you probably want a Blizzard Strayer build, and maybe you want a Marashase Hunter build for bosses, whereas your Blizzard Strayer set, technically if you're fighting like mobs, would give slightly more crit rate and a bit more universal cryo damage. For Arena, you know, we've been talking a lot about smart tenacity set for her in freeze teams because of this attack buff. But obviously if you're playing her normally, you want to use her signature set, the golden troop set, because this gives so much skill damage. So there's many examples, and you'll know the exact examples you want on your account. But of course there are some characters where 2 is not enough, and I guess that could be a complaint. For example, Xiangling, I got my emblem set. Say for example I've got this build here, it's got so much ER, but maybe I'm playing on a team where she doesn't need that much ER. Then you'd want another emblem set with attack. So maybe you want to save one like this around this ER instead, but not just emblem. Obviously, if you know, you know. Maybe if you're playing her Morlani, you want an Archaic Petra set. Maybe you want an Instructor set. Maybe you want a Deepwood. Actually, you know what? If you're a Kaniche player, same thing probably applies for Moika. If you play her with Kaniche, you probably want a Deepwood Memories Moika build, because she's the most convenient character to give this Dendro Res Shred. So overall, there are circumstances where you could complain 2 custom loadouts is not enough. But you know, that's nitpicking. Maybe they could open it up to 3 options in the future. But then again, you'll probably have these weird situations where maybe some characters you want 4 or 5 artifact loadouts. I can't expect them to get that perfectly right anyway. Like, I can't expect them to cater to Kokomi players who have Ocean Huge Clam sets, you have Tenacity sets, Flower of Paradise Lost for Nilu. It is what it is. For the most part, 2 is good enough. Also, I should say, to be fair, complaining about not getting the exact build you want is more of a thing for the more try-hard community. If you're a more casual player, like for example here, recommended stats, generate. I mean, this one gives the exact build I'm using right now. Even if we don't get the saving alternatives option, these should get you the majority of the way there. Like, how much worse is this build than my build? Yeah, it will depend on buffs. But if you're a casual player, this is probably good enough. Like, the ratio is not bad. Electro damage bonus is not bad compared to attack. Let me just test this freeze Guanyu build. Now this is a bit scuffed. I have noticed some quality of life issues that they may not have specifically addressed in this blog post, but I hope they do bring to the game. For example, if you do a custom config here, let's say I'm playing Freeze Guanyu, Blizzard Strayer, and Marechaussee Hunter, you'd think that this would just open up both sets to be chose. But when you go generate, it's actually a two piece, which obviously you don't want. So the game's AI, whichever this uses to make the builds, it's not able to decide what is the stronger build overall between 2 different sets. So you have to switch between Blizzard Strayer, and then if you want to do a Marechaussee Hunter build, you have to switch to this. But you have to remember to take off Blizzard Strayer to generate this build. Also, and this is something that I noticed as well, say for example I want to switch all these builds, there's a ICD on switching. It's a 2-second cooldown per switching, which is, I don't know, maybe you guys might find that annoying at some point. Plus, speaking of this whole alternative section, it is a bit of a mess. Like for example, I want to play Melt Guanyu instead. Let me open it up. No artifacts available in inventory. I don't understand what the issue is here. Yeah, sometimes I don't know what's going on here, because I quite clearly had a Melt Guanyu build. Look, I've got all these pieces. So I'm not sure sometimes if I make mistakes or what, but I quite clearly have a Wanderer's Troop build, but it's not able to generate it. But the quick one is able to generate it. So yeah, I don't really know what happens with that. There is also another issue I noticed, which, say for example, I want to make my Navia build. I go here. As you can see, it generates overcapped crit rate build. So let me generate again. Let me add crit damage. The game isn't able to tell like which is your better build between crit rate and crit damage. So you can only do one at a time. So you'd have to do that, then you can pick that. But then if you want to check alternatives, if you want slightly higher crit rate, say for example you're annoyed, you don't like it when your Navia doesn't crit, but obviously you don't want 110 crit rate, check alternatives. It won't actually give you the crit rate options. But that could be more annoying with someone like Morlani, because Morlani recommended stats. Her recommended stats are all over the place. Like, how would you know if your crit damage circlet is better than your HP circlet? Well, you kind of just have to generate one at a time and check these builds. But the game won't be able to know that. Say for example I pick this and I'm not happy with this HP because I'm using a hydro damage bonus goblet. If I go check alternatives, I can't find the HP goblet, which means I'll have to generate again, switch to some hydro 2 HP, then generate. And then if you do that, it won't show the hydro ones. So hopefully it's the quality of life that they would improve on, which is the ability to select multiple main stats, which I'm actually surprised they don't let you do. Anyway, fingers crossed. I'm really looking forward to this. I hope the quality of life is exactly what we want. Maybe it's not perfect, but I hope it is what we want, and we are able to pick. Anyway, for those of you wondering why we can't just have it more simpler, why we can't just get our artifacts here and just save it, maybe there's a menu here like Woowa. As always, we don't know what kind of spaghetti coding and jank they have. Maybe this system here is the only way they could get it to work for Genshin. I do have to say though, Honkai Impact had the best variation of artifact loadouts in my opinion. Not only that, you have your artifacts, you have your weapon, and you could just save the plans. Yeah, if I remember, you had 3 different loadouts, so you could choose 3 different builds and then just instantly save and load them. This was the best one, but like I said, games code works differently. It's hard to say. What might be easy for Honkai Impact to do might not be easy for Genshin. I don't know. Anyway, stay tuned for the update. Thanks for watching.